For nearly 2 decades, you've turned to Illegal Curve Hockey as your destination for the latest news, audio, and analysis regarding the Winnipeg Jets, Manitoba Moose, and all things hockey in Manitoba. Join Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, and Ezra Ginsburg as a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good afternoon, Winnipeg. Good afternoon, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this afternoon in downtown Winnipeg at Cityplace, as well as everybody joining us on all of our social media platforms, we say good afternoon, universe, and welcome to a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's the Illegal Curve pregame show, getting you set for Game 2 between the St. Louis Blues and the Winnipeg Jets. We know the Jets have that 1-0 lead on the strength of a dominant back half of Game 1 on Saturday. And of course, the question, as we will delve deep into over the next 90 or so minutes, is if the Jets can keep it going for a second game and take a 2-0 stranglehold on the best-of-7 series. With Dave Manouk, with Ezra Ginsburg, with producer Tim, I'm your host, Drew Mandel, here to get us ready, game day ready. The buzz continues to be in the air. I was driving around downtown. You could see the people wearing their white. They're wearing their white here at Cityplace. They're getting their pregame snacks, pregame drinks. They're all in on Game 2 between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. Gentlemen, great to see you both on this Monday afternoon. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Back at Cityplace, there is no place we would rather be than doing the Jets pregame show right now. And as you said, Drew, it's time to shake off the demons, the Game 2 demons, if you will, of the last 2 years. Obviously, Game 2, the importance is huge based on what happened in the Jets Golden Knights series, based on what happened in the Jets Avalanche series. It's obviously a huge game. If you can go up 2-0, we know how hard it is for the opposing team, the team that's down 0-2, to come back and win 4 of their last 5 games. So tonight should be another big game, and obviously, we have a lot to talk about. Gabe Vilardi, looks like he's getting closer. He might be ready once the series goes back to St. Louis, but it's obviously business as usual for the Jets. They know, and Scott Arniel talked about it, right, Dave, before during today's presser. They're focused on Game 2. They're not looking ahead to Game 3 or Game 4. They don't want to talk about when Gabe Vilardi is going to come back in the lineup, even though they obviously hope that he's back sooner rather than later. They know they got to take care of business and win Game 2 here tonight.
Yeah, no, you're right, Ezzy. The focus is exactly on the St. Louis Blues in tonight's game. There's no talking about tomorrow. One of the questions that Scott Arniel was asked was specifically about the idea of what's going to be tomorrow. You know, the scheduling allows them to have a couple of days in between Game 2 and Game 3. Might you shorten your bench, was the question from Kelly Moore. And he said, listen, we got to win Game 2.
Sure.
So if it means we shorten our bench and we had a game tomorrow or we have a game in 2 days, it doesn't matter. I'm doing what we have to do to win tonight's game. That is what's most important. So, yeah, he is definitely focused, laser focused, I'd say. Hey, this is Jeremy Rutherford, good friend of the show.
Jeremy, hello.
Jeremy was just on the show with us.
Come over and say hello if you want.
Jeremy.
Here, Jeremy, jump on for a second. Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic. He covers the St. Louis Blues. He's a good friend of our program. And
This is a safe space, Jeremy.
There you look at this. A walk-on appearance by Jeremy Rutherford here. You never know who's going to pop by us here.
Jeremy wasn't expecting me to call him out, but that's what we do when we're doing the show here at Cityplace, Jeremy.
Scooch a bit closer.
Here,
we'll get you on
here.
the camera a little bit there.
I heard the voices there.
Yeah, you recognized us.
Long time no see.
Maybe we might have to
you.
adjust the camera a little bit, but no, Jeremy, I mean, you were at, we were just talking about the Jets. We just got the show started, but from your perspective, what was the attitude like within the Blues room? I mean, obviously,
And I think that even in a loss, it can give you confidence in a weird way, because when you score 3 against, Hellebuck and you lead in the third period, I think you have to feel good about things. And then they feel like they know what happened in the third period. And they gave a lot of credit to Winnipeg. That Winnipeg forecheck is what caused the Blues to make the mistakes they made in the defensive zone. But I feel like they think those are correctable things.
Jeremy, the big change that the Blues made, same lineup, but they've swapped Jake Neighbors and Jimmy Snuggerud. I mean, Snuggerud is a raw rookie. I mean, we're talking about, Game 9 of a professional tonight? Why, that decision from the St. Louis Blues coaching staff? What do you think that they're hoping to get out of making that swap?
Yeah, we asked Jim Montgomery that today, and he said that they're just looking for some offense. Under 20 shots the other night against Winnipeg in Game 1, and they didn't create a ton. I mean, they had some good offensive looks when they got them, they didn't put them on net every time. But I think that when you flip-flop Jimmy Snuggerud and Jake Neighbors, it puts them in position to have a little bit of a different look. The guy they're missing, as you guys know, is Dylan Holloway. He was on that line with Braden Shen and Jordan Kyrou and was terrific. But without him, they've been moving the other two back and forth, trying to find the right combination with that top six.
I was thinking after watching, game one, just the way the Jets sort of controlled the game for the last, 25, 30 minutes or so. And then you look back to that game on April 7th, where the Jets, it was a close game. It was a 3-1 final, but the Jets controlled that game as well. Who from the Blues needs to sort of elevate their game at this point to be able to combat what the Jets have done so effectively for the last couple of games against the Blues?
I think it's going to be the veterans. I think that there was a lot made of the penalties taken by Jake Neighbors and Zach Bolduc in that first game. So the storyline, I've written about it. Other people have written about the fact that they need to control their emotions, but that's not why they lost the game. Granted, they did. Winnipeg scored a power play goal off the Neighbors penalty, and then obviously the Bolduc penalty didn't help either. But I think that you're looking at guys, Braden Shen, Robert Thomas, probably Pavel Buchnevich. He wasn't real noticeable to me in that first game. So if the Blues are going to even this series up and they're going to create more offense and potentially, score some goals tonight against Connor Hellebuyck, they're going to need more shots, and it's going to take better play than in game one from their top six.
You just mentioned Braden Shen, and obviously Shen and Scheifele were going at it towards the end of game one. Do you expect there to be a little bit of a carryover, not just necessarily those two guys, but overall in the style of game? Because obviously St. Louis knows how much pressure is on them. They don't want to go down 2-0 going back to Missouri for game 3.
Yeah, I think that what's the over-under on hits for Braden Shen in the first period tonight? 8 the other night, and 24 in the first period for the team. What was it, 53 in the game? I go back to what Ken Hitchcock used to always tell us: if you have that many hits, that means you don't have the puck. So I think that's something that's kind of indicative of how the game could go if you have that many hits. I think it'll be physical. Do I anticipate anything like that in the early going of this one? No. Typically with the Blues, and I'm sure it's the case around the league, I just see more of the Blues is when you see that in a previous game, it's not there at the start of the next game. They realize that, they can't get caught up in that and then go down 0-2 heading back to St. Louis. They've got to play the game and produce, as opposed to get caught up in how that game ended the other night.
Jeremy, we know how important Robert Thomas is, and he left I believe the last regular season game of the Blues. They said it was precautionary, didn't want to risk anything with him. But in that scrum at the end of the game, I didn't notice it first. Someone pointed it out to me. He was a little slow getting up. Now I know he took morning skate today, but is there any concerns in that regard?
So I don't have any specific information. All I can say is that he did miss the practice the day after the injury last week. And they said it was precautionary. They were doing a defensive style practice. He's a great defensive player. Jim Montgomery said he didn't need the reps. If you want to buy into that, I think it was a day for him to recover from what ails him. If I had to guess with Robert Thomas, I would just say he's not 100%. And I think that's probably pretty obvious. So I did not see what you're talking about in terms of slow to get up, but it doesn't surprise me because I just feel like after last week's injury, I don't think that he's up to his normal self.
We'll let you go on this one, Jeremy. Appreciate you popping on, doing a cameo walk-on here. As long as you don't send us an invoice, we'll be fine with everything here.
Last time I was in the front seat of my car doing this, so at least I get to sit down with you guys.
There you go. This is better, and you're not driving this time, so that works also. Works well. That bottom six matchup, we know how good the Lowry line is for the Jets, and a lot of people have said, that line might be the best third line in hockey right now. Can the Blues withstand that third line? You look at the numbers. Yes, Lowry got the empty net goal, but really they controlled the pace of the play, the flow of play. 80% expected goals percentage from that line of Lowry, Tanev, and Appleton. Who in the bottom six for the Blues can sort of combat that? Because, of course, Scott Arniel gets last change. He gets the matchups he wants on home ice. In the bottom of the Blues lineup, where can an elevation happen to combat that talented Jets third line?
Yeah, first, can I say that I did give Lowry my 5th place vote in the Selke? I think that he's a. You guys agree with that, or
your ex-followers just skyrocketed in Winnipeg?
So I think he's deserving of that. He's definitely a solid player and gives up them the advantage in that matchup on that third line. That's the one thing that you have to keep in mind. And I realize that Winnipeg's dealing with Ehlers being out, but with the Blues, they're without Holloway, and so that requires them to keep, whether it be Neighbors or whomever in that top six, and Matthew Joseph is in the lineup. And so that line has been pretty good, especially throughout that 12-game winning streak with Joseph and Sundqvist and Bolduc. But I think Joseph would be the odd guy out. So, I think Winnipeg is probably going to take advantage of that matchup. In terms of who needs to step up, it would probably be a Bolduc. He's been a rookie, 19 goals. I think that a lot of Blues fans would like to see him in the top 6 because of his shot. Right now, Jim Montgomery wants to keep him on that third line. So if he's going to be on that third line, I think if they could get something out of him, especially some offense, I think that would help that matchup.
I lied. One last question. With the weird schedule, I mean, after game 2, they play Thursday and then they don't play again until Sunday. Do you think that will impact Jim Montgomery's coaching decisions today in terms of how he runs the bench? Maybe you just see him sort of step on try and match up that top 6 and just grind them as much as they can, given that there is that extra time between games 2 and 3 and then 3 and 4?
I think if there is a game 6 and 7, it's in July, right? This is insane. I didn't ask Jim that specifically, but I did see Scott's response to that question.
Right.
And I think you have to play to win, right? I don't think you can
play for tomorrow.
Yeah, you can't play for tomorrow, especially if you're St. Louis going down 0-2. So I think they're going to have to play the bench, how they see fit to win the game and not worry. Even though you're right, 2 days off, that can change it from a big picture perspective, but they need to win the game.
Jeremy Rutherford will have complete coverage of the Jets Blues game 2 on theathletic.com, looking at it through the Blues lens. As all of us here in Winnipeg, of course, follow Murat, but we encourage our audience to follow you as well so they get the full perspective of everything that's going on in this series.
I used Jeremy's last appearance on our show to have tremendous Blues insight for the next 3 weeks. Anytime I said, well, Jeremy Rutherford was on our show 3 weeks ago, and he told me this. And so I'm like, this is perfect.
Well, when you were on, that was the day after Jimmy Snuggerud signed, right? And now here he is in his second career playoff game, right? So
it's amazing. It's amazing. I can't imagine what it's like to be in his shoes with that whiteout the other night.
It was. Hang on, was that? I guess no. You would have experienced it before back in 2019, so you're used to it. But it is still a.
We don't talk about 2019
right?
here.
I wasn't 20 years old and on the ice.
Right, it's a slight difference. Exactly right.
Yeah, but even, Jeremy, it's interesting. But even Mason Appleton today was talking about trying to harness that energy and how difficult it is because it's such a difference from the regular season. So I can only imagine, like you said, what a 20-year-old kid fresh out of college would be thinking playing that.
Amazing. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you so
Jeremy
much.
Rutherford of The Athletic doing a walk-on appearance here as he just flag him down as he's on his way to the rink. Jeremy, thank you. Be well. Enjoy the game. There he goes, Jeremy Rutherford joining us. You never know who's going to pop by. That's what we find out here on the Illegal
Last time
Curve.
it was Craig Button.
It was
This time
Craig
Jeremy
Button.
Rutherford.
Exactly. You never know who's going to pop on by here as we do the Illegal Curve pregame show live on location here at Cityplace. Tons of Jets fans around tuning in.
Phyllis, all the way
is over
from
there.
Morden.
There you go. Hello, Phyllis. Always a huge supporter of ours, and we appreciate that. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, and that's really what it boils down to. The excitement, again, we've felt it for a couple days now. It continues to be felt all throughout downtown Winnipeg. For me, from the Jets' perspective, sort of the slow start to the game was something that the Jets talked about a little bit, and the nerves, because I thought the Jets did play a little bit nervy for the first 5 or so minutes of the game until they were able to settle down and then take control of the majority of the flow for the last 30 minutes. I'm expecting a much better start from the Winnipeg Jets today. Scott Arniel, I think, is also expecting a similarly better start.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought you were going to go, Dave. I'll go. But
I know. I felt like I
mean,
was just talking, so I felt like it was your turn.
No, it's all good. And we saw that I don't know how much of the game you guys caught yesterday between the Leafs and the Senators, but it was the same thing, right? Like the Senators were running around with their heads cut off, like chickens with their heads cut off, I should say. And it was the same thing. And you mentioned Scott Arniel earlier. I believe Mason Appleton talked about it as well, calling the whiteout not normal. I mean, it's easier said than done, right, boys, to harness your emotions, control your emotions, manage your emotions, whatever you want to say. It's 15,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs wearing white, right? Like it's completely different than the regular season, obviously. So, I mean, the start is going to be important, but I think the most important thing about Game 1 was the way the Jets finished.
Well, that's
the way they suppressed all those Blues shots and didn't really allow the Blues to get anything going in the Jets zone, right? So, I mean, that's what I'm focusing on. If they can replicate that, even for a couple periods, I think it's going to be, tough for the Blues to manage to get take home game 2.
Well, to your point, as you look at the last 2 games the Jets and the Blues have played. So how many shots on goal did the Blues have on Saturday? I think 17?
Yeah, something
like that.
16 or 17.
Right. So a very low number, a number that
2 in the last period.
2 in the last period, only one of which came at a consequential
I think 6 in
time.
the second.
Right, exactly. So they went 40 minutes without really getting a shot.
Not a lot of shots, Dave.
No,
I think
It's not a lot of
trying
shots.
to say.
Yeah.
But then you go back to the April 7th game, and the Blues only had 15 shots in that game. So
Right.
you're really looking at a Winnipeg Jets team that whatever they've been doing, they have been suppressing the St. Louis Blues so well that it can't, if you're St. Louis, you're saying, Monday's game was an opportunity. Saturday's game was an opportunity. They have a 3-2 lead, got to get 20 good minutes. And they couldn't do anything in that third period. It's got to be a little bit demoralizing and concerning if you're a member of the St. Louis Blues to say the last 6 periods of hockey that we faced off against the Winnipeg Jets, we've mustered a grand total of 32 shots on goal in 6 periods of hockey. These are abnormal numbers. That's what you get often in one game, never mind in 2 games cumulatively.
These Blues are not the Anaheim Ducks, clearly, when that little run and gun that we saw the last game of the season. But no, you're right, Drew, and especially in that third period. This is an opportunity for you to lock, especially game 1 of the third period, lock it down, and you can't do it. And the Jets, we saw it. We saw it from a team that was hungry and back to playing their style. Like everybody talked about it. Everybody acknowledged it. They looked nervous. They looked like Mason Appleton said, we're trying to figure out a way to harness all that. I said this, I believe, on the pregame show last time, bring in the energy, harness good, block out the bad from Kevin Nealon and in Happy Gilmore.
Great reference.
Thank you. But the fact of the matter is that you really do need to do that. You need to play to your game. Now, I suspect, now they've got that out of their system. Now that first game is done, the Jets are going to be ready to go. I'm not suggesting the Blues aren't going to be ready to go, but I think that the Jets now have their template. It's hard to argue. Right. 2 straight games in the third period, one of which was, 3 weeks ago or even less, sorry. Yeah, about 3 weeks.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And then the other one was 2 days ago. So, you've got these are your barometer for which you know how to play hockey. And it's not like it's just against the Blues. They did it consistently against all of the teams in the National Hockey League. There's a reason why they were the President's Trophy winners. But again, you've created that template. And it was interesting today talking about winger wins on the faceoff. I've never really thought of it like that. When the faceoff is between the centermen, and then once it goes to the wing,
which is what led to the game-winning goal, because Alex Iafallo right. came in. And, it was a scramble draw. He came in, and he's the one who brought it back up to Pionk.
Right.
That eventually led to the Connor goal.
But I just thought it was a concept I'd never really considered. Right, it was this idea of hey, the wingers essentially are having a face-off to get that free puck that the center is just won, or if it's a 50-50, whatever it is. And it was just an interesting concept, and we heard Mason Appleton kind of talk about their thought processes behind it and how important it is, and as Drew just said, led to a goal.
And boys, even though I think, we all agree, especially the third period, that was, almost as good of a third period that you could ask for from the Jets. I do want to see a little bit more from the Nemesnikov, Niederreiter, Perfetti line. That's what I wanted to mention. I didn't think they were bad in game 1, and I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here.
They controlled the flow. They won their minutes on the ice. I looked it up, ahead of today. They had a possession numbers of 81%. So
they were good. No,
Perfetti had one of the best chances in that first period when he shot it wide.
Yeah.
But I just want a little bit more offense out of that line, right? Because again, I'm not trying to focus on the negative here. I'm just saying, looking at it analytically.
Don't make me get the people here at Cityplace to boo you.
Well, exactly. But even though you just completely smashed my point because they were 81% Corsi in game 1. I certainly thought that there was a little bit more to give there, and I think Niederreiter had a shot on net. And as you mentioned, you're right. Perfetti had a good scoring chance in game 1, but I just want to see a little bit more from that line because obviously Connor Scheifele, Iafallo were excellent. And I like the Lowry line. The fourth line obviously chips in with a goal. We weren't sure who got the goal originally. We thought it might have been Morgan Barron.
Yeah.
And by the way, in the hockey pool in Richie's, you might have heard of that guy. He used to be on the show. You get bonus points for your last round pick. So you get 2 points for a goal, but 4 points because it's a last round pick. And Drew and I were texting back and high-fiving each other because we got a 4-point goal. And then they gave it to Jared Anderson Dolan, obviously. But such a good story. And I'm sure we'll talk to Kenny about Jared Anderson Dolan. Mike McIntyre had a great article in the Winnipeg Free Press about his family being raised by 2 mothers. And you love to see that, right? Because Jared Anderson Dolan was with the Moose for the majority of the season. and he's fit in really nicely on that fourth line. So just wanted to get back. If there's a key line for me to watch in this game, because to me, Connor Scheifele, Iafallo, they are playing at the highest level they possibly could be playing, right? Like, I don't know how much more you can ask out of those guys. Right. Like, they are playing well right now.
They shut down the top opposition of the St. Louis Blues. They you know, at 5-on-5, there was no comparison. They were far better than the Robert Thomas line that they were matched up against. And so they were winning their minutes both defensively and offensively. I mean, 3-point nights for Connor, 3-point night for Scheifele, 2-point night for Morrissey. I mean, the stars for the Jets stepped up in game one, Dave.
Which again, quote our pregame show from 2 days ago. What was our X factor? We talked about those guys. It was from the Saturday show. Sorry, when you do 5 hours of broadcasting in one day, you kind of forget which is what.
The 9 a.m. show, not the Illegal Curve hockey show, not the Illegal Curve pregame show.
Although I believe we talked about it on both shows, but specifically it was a category. Oh, here comes Kenny Weeb on time. So we'll talk about that with Kenny. But just to me, those guys stepped it up. And again, they didn't get out of the structure. You didn't see them when it wasn't working, when they weren't having success early in the game, not breaking out and saying, oh, we're going to try and do something different. They just did what they've done all year long, stuck with it, and they got rewarded.
I'll tell you what, Kenny is coming down to sit down. So why don't we take our first commercial break of the afternoon. When we return, Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press is set to join us for much more about the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. It's a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, the Illegal Curve pregame show, live on location here at Cityplace, as well as online. Don't go anywhere. Much more about the Jets and the St. Louis Blues set to come.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. Cityplace is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make Cityplace your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit Cityplace at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
We are back. Welcome to the Illegal Curve pregame show. We're live on location at Cityplace. Great crowd, great atmosphere here. Everyone getting ready for game 2 between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. The Jets, of course, have that 1-0 series lead. We remind everybody following tonight's game, the Illegal Curve post-game show will have complete coverage of game 2 between the Jets and the Blues. It's an exciting time, which means we bring Mr. Excitement himself to the show. Ken Wiebe of the Winnipeg Free Press set to join us to talk more about Game 2. Kenny, nice to see you. Thanks very much for making time for us this afternoon.
Always a pleasure, gents. But quickly, I do subscribe to the Randy Carlyle theory, but Dave, I'm not on time. I'm early when I'm here at 10:02.
That's right.
5 minutes. If you're not 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late, but 10 minutes early is not on time. It's early.
Okay. It's an old school mentality. I don't know if that flies with the new age players. Us new age broadcasters. I don't know if we subscribe to the same thing. I figure if we start within 2 minutes of our actual start time, that means we're early.
Yeah, I'll tell you who's never on time, Kenny.
Yeah.
Us.
Yeah, we're just happy if we have 3 working microphones at this point.
Hey, you guys know on a Saturday, if you got me for 9:30, I'll be there by 9:15.
Oh, we know it. Don't worry. And you'll stay with us till 10:30.
Exactly.
Kenny, obviously, Game 1 for the Winnipeg Jets, the back half of the game went swimmingly well. I mean, especially in that third period where they controlled the play. They got the 3 goals that led to the victory. Is that basically just the MO they have to follow entering today's Game 2? We were talking about it earlier. Last 2 games they've played against the Blues on Saturday and then 2 weeks ago on the 7th. They've given up a total of 32 shots against the Blues in the last 2 games total.
Yeah, and honestly, Drew, I didn't mind their parts of the first period. I think they were disjointed out of the gate. But after the Neighbors penalty, which was very undisciplined, I thought that after the Jets got the power play goal, they controlled the play for a good chunk of time.
Right.
And obviously, they get the 4th line goal to take the lead. And St. Louis was almost like in a hope they get to the intermission down 1 scenario. Then you get a block shot that lands on Oscar Sundqvist's stick, and all of a sudden it's a tie game, and you're kind of wondering, well, how did that go? But I thought the Jets really found their legs in the last 2 periods, in the third specifically. They gave up almost nothing at 5-on-5 in the entire game. Clean up the special teams and, see what happens. But overall, I do think there were some nerves, but I didn't think the Jets played as poorly as some folks are making it out to be. St. Louis is a very good hockey team. They won 12 games in a row down the stretch and beaten by the Jets where the streak was snapped. But this is going to be a tight series. We know that, but the Jets sort of dictated the terms in the third, and that's something that they're going to try to do a little bit earlier today for sure.
Kenny, you asked Scott Arniel today about Nino Niederreiter, and right before you popped on, I was saying, just personally, I'm not saying that they had a bad game, because I actually think they had a good game, but offensively, I'm kind of looking for a little bit more from that line, not just tonight in Game 2, but going forward in the series. But specifically, Nino, what did you see in Game 1, and what are you expecting as the series progresses? Because obviously it's not that there's a lot of pressure on him being up on the second line. He's usually on the Lowry line, but what are your kind of overall thoughts on just Niederreiter and what the Jets need from him in the series?
Yeah, it's interesting, as I actually thought that Niederreiter was the best Jet in the first period, quite frankly.
Eye test versus analytics.
There you go. So for me,
I was wrong on both of them, by the way.
At a time when a lot of guys looked nervous, to me, Nino stuck to his personal blueprint, time around the blue paint. I thought he was quite physical, getting involved. Jets didn't really generate much in terms of forecheck in the first period for me, but when they did disrupt play, it was Niederreiter getting on one of the defensemen, and then the second quick idea with Nemesnikov. But yeah, I mean, was their line as dangerous as they had been down the stretch? I don't think so, but I don't think Nino was the weak link on that front. I think that he actually helped drive the play a lot, but when you have skilled guys like Perfetti specifically, who has such great vision, you need to spend time around the blue paint and get to the hard areas. I thought Nino Niederreiter did a good job of that. But yeah, I mean, this is a guy who's also spent the bulk of his career in a top 6 role.
He's got lots of playoff experience, that's for sure.
And that's the other part too, right? The guy's been living in the playoffs for the bulk of his career. So to me, that he played well was not a surprise. But yeah, I mean, in terms of offense generated, top line generated the majority of the Jets' offense in Game 1. I think at 5-on-5, that's pretty fair to say. That second line is going to need to come through with some big goals at even strength if they want to end it quickly, I think. And Niederreiter is a guy that can do that. And I thought that he's been skating better in the last 2 weeks. I thought there was a stretch of time, even dating back to the time with the Lowry line, where I'm not saying Nino looked tired, but he didn't look to have the same amount of energy, whether that's being banged up in games 60 to 80 or whatever it is. To me, he's found his legs again. And when he's moving and efficient and on the forecheck, that's when he's at his very best.
Kenny, we knew that the Scheifele and Connor needed to be the X factors for the Jets, and they were clearly. And to me, the maturity we saw from those guys was probably the most impressive thing, because in years past, we probably would have seen them kind of freelance and try and get out of the structure not because they didn't care about the team, but because they were wanting to have success for the team. But I thought it was very impressive that they stuck within the structure that Scott O'Neill has implemented throughout the course of this season, and then of course got rewarded for it.
Yeah, not only did they get rewarded offensively, but I thought it really started turning defensively for them. I think there were times in the first period and even parts of the second where it looked like that Robert Thomas matchup might be a little much for them, quite frankly. And Thomas is a dangerous player. Yes, his goal came on the power play, but to me, he's their most dangerous player. So the fact that you have to go up against him the majority of the time, that we often see Lowry have that job, but because of Schen's size, they had Schenn and Lowry on Schenn instead, which meant a tough best on best for Scheifele. So offense wasn't easy early for them, but I thought they already started to win the matchup in the second period, and then they took it to him in the third. After Kyle got robbed on the power play chance, then they really started to elevate their game, and quite frankly, they left their opponent in the dust in the third period. And when they play like that, they're incredibly dangerous. But to me, it all started defensively. They didn't give up a ton, but there were times where you're like, ooh, well, Thomas, hottest player in the NHL since Four Nations, guys, right? 40 points. So it's not an easy job to say, hey, by the way, we'd love you to carry the offense, but do you mind checking these guys while you're at it? So I thought that part was also critical for them. And we know Connor Hellebuck's got to be great. Wasn't elite level Hellebuck in game one,
Right.
But for the Jets to win this series comfortably, they need Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor to be the best skaters on either team. And in game one, it was mission accomplished on that front.
Well, along those same lines where you talk about, Mark Scheifele and defensive stopper have never been two words that have necessarily gone well together. But this year, he's not going to be a Selke candidate, but he's been pretty good at shutting down the opposition. So how much pride, obviously offense is where you get the bouquets and everything. And, that's where the real excitement is all about getting the puck in the net. But how much pride do you think Mark and Kyle are taking in getting that matchup against Robert Thomas and then winning those minutes on top of it? It's got to be such an emotional boost to them, just the same, to be able to, put that feather in their cap.
Absolutely right, Drew. There were times last year, Jared Bednar put the McKinnon line out against Scheifele's line, not because he thought he could handle it, but because they thought they could expose that line in those scenarios in Denver. So I do agree that both Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele have taken really big steps in terms of their defensive game, and that's critical for the Jets if they want to go on a long run. The other thing for me, and again, this is not just because we were asking him about it on Friday, but to me, the way that Mark perked up on Friday when he was asked about scar tissue. Let's be honest, guys. It hasn't gone swimmingly for him since 2018 in the playoffs. Right. Yes, he's been almost a point-a-game player. That's true. But he has not been dominant in terms of how he's played, two-way play. The 14-goal, 20-point playoff in 2018 was exceptional. And it looked like that would be the start of the arc. And it's sort of plateaued a little bit, if you will. And, some of that is injury related. Some of it is suspension related. But to me, Mark knows that in order to take the next step in his career, people know he's one of the, top 10 center, whatever you want to call it, but you need playoff results. And for him, that in order for the Jets to have playoff results, Mark's got to be one of their best players. And, same would hold true for Kyle Connor and Josh Morrissey on the back end. But a big part of that is the commitment to two-way play. And the fact that Mark had his best offensive year in a year where he had his best defensive play, that's a little bit of an easier sell if you're Scott O'Neill, because the results are there, quite frankly. Right. It's not costing you offense. In fact, it's getting you more offense because you have the puck more and you're not chasing it more.
Kenny, you reported earlier today at Game Day Skate, Gabe Vilardi out there in a non-contact. He's getting closer. I'm not going to ask you to speculate, even though I asked your colleague, Mike McIntyre.
I can speculate.
Okay, we can speculate then. Mike said, game 3 or game 4. He actually said between games 3 and game 5. So obviously, let's say game 4 or game 5 for Gabe Vilardi, right? We're all kind of optimistic that he's going to be back for game 3, but I think that might be.
Don't be optimistic.
Exactly. I was going to say game 3, not going to happen.
There's a fine line between optimistic and delusional,
and to be clear, Kenny, as he says "we," he often means him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
it's a royal we.
I don't need to speculate. I'll be surprised if you see him in game 3.
No question.
I would say the earliest is game 4. Going into the series, I said game 5 is kind of what I expected, but because of the two-day breaks, it opens the door for game 4. But to me, I think we'll see how the next few days go. He's moving well, that's for sure. But
he's still wearing yellow. Until you're not wearing yellow, it's a moot point.
And even further to that point, Drew, I mean, anyone who watched the first period the other night, you might be feeling good, but if you have Braden Shen running around after you, maybe it's a little bit safer to wait one more day, though there's probably going to be no safe time when it comes to Braden Shen on the other side. I thought he is the emotional leader for the Blues. 8 hits in the first.
Can he drag that team? How far can he drag this team? Because you look at the rosters, you look at the matchups, you look at how the last 2 games have gone, and the Jets have been the clear better of the 2 teams.
For sure, Drew. But what I would say that, I wouldn't call this a surprise because it's something that we've seen down the stretch, but the biggest reason for optimism, if you're the St. Louis Blues, is the way Jordan Kyrou played in game 1. And part of that is being dragged a little bit by your leader, Braden Shen. If he's getting his nose dirty every shift, you better get involved if you're on that line. We know he was their leading goal scorer this year, but Kyrou is the kind of guy who has a bit of a reputation for playing on the perimeter. He was not a perimeter player in game 1. He was the most dangerous Blues player in terms of offense. And quite frankly, if Connor Hellebuyck doesn't close the pads on that breakaway, we might be having an entirely different conversation. Though I do applaud Jim Montgomery's honesty. After the game, he was asked specifically about it and said, with how bad we played in the third, I'm not sure a 2-goal lead would have made any difference, but it would have given them a little more breathing room. But to answer your question, Braden was asked flat out, can he sustain that pace by Sean Reynolds today? He said he didn't blink. He said, this is how I play playoff hockey. You need to wear down the opponent. And again, I'm not saying he's going to have 9 hits a game, but you're going to notice Braden Shen pretty much every time he comes on the ice. So brace yourself, right? I mean, this is playoff hockey for him. We've seen it dating back to his time with the Brandon Wheat Kings, and I don't think he's going to be gearing down too much. The revolutions will be getting higher rather than lower when it comes to Shen. Now, he's going to need some help, obviously, if they want to make it a long series, but he's really been the guy. He's the identity player on this team. We often talk about 2019, only 5 guys left, but the heartbeat of that team is Braden Shen, and when he plays that way, he gets other guys on board, and that's what we saw in game 1. Look at Toropchenko, 7 hits, 6 for Neighbors, right? It was 7 for Neighbors and 6 for Toropchenko, but
the torpedo.
53 hits in the game. I don't know that they'll be at that number today, but they're not going to go from 53 to 23 would be my bold prediction.
Kenny, just going back to Gabe Vilardi, because I'm fascinated by his return in the sense that Iafallo has been so good on that top line. Like if you're Scott Arniel,
recency bias,
absolutely.
Recency bias.
If you're Scott Arniel, like I know there's a lot of talk of Iafallo remaining on the top line even when Vilardi comes back. But if you're Arniel,
no, there's not.
How do you? No. I think no, Kenny. I think Vilardi goes back to the top line for sure. But if you're Arniel, how? It must be a little bit difficult to manage that because of how well Iafallo's played with Scheifele and Connor, right?
Yes, Ezzy, I kid. There's lots of people talking about it, I know, but the thing we can't forget is that this was one of the best lines in the entire NHL this year for 60 to 70 games. So Iafallo's doing a fabulous job, especially defensively, and that's the part about it, Ezzy, too. He's often gone with that line in games in the last 5 or 10 minutes. So you're bang on in terms of the comfort factor in using him there, and we'll see him there. But I just think that because that line was so good on a number of offensive fronts for a team that is both good structurally, defensively, and can score, it also makes them more dangerous. But, I mean, to your point, I don't think that it's automatic that Alex Iafallo goes down to the 4th line. You could see him either on the 2nd or the 3rd, depending on how some things shake down. So, you know I'm teasing, but he's a guy who's capable of staying on. My
feelings are hurt, Kenny. I'm gonna be.
I can tell
during the whole duration of game 2. I'm just gonna be, thinking about it. Like
I'm gonna bring
Kenny
you an
was so
illegal
mean
curve
to me.
sandwich at some point, Ezzy, to make you feel better.
Ezzy or Kenny, you don't have to apologize for being mean to Ezzy. I've made a career out of it so far.
But no, I mean, it's good to know that you can go to that club in the bag if you have to. Absolutely. I just think that again, because of how well, it's just the trickle-down effect, though. So it's easy to say, well, just put him on the 2nd line. Well, Cole's played almost the entire season on the right side. Now you're saying to Cole Perfetti, I know you're playing great, but why don't you go over to the other side and we'll maybe put a guy in here who may or may not fit here. So I just think that top line has been so good together for so long. Your best bet is to go back to what has served them well over the course of the year. And then again, if you need to go the other way, or if you're protecting a lead, obviously Alex Iafallo is the first guy over the boards, first guy penalty killing with Adam Lowry. You can go to them with that top line, but let's just not discount Velarde's season, career high in basically everything, including games played, goals.
I think you were actually very close, if I remember correctly. I think
he didn't get hurt. I had him at 35. And,
35-75, right?
Yeah, so yes.
Not bad.
We'll round up.
That's what we do, Kenny. You know what, Ken, one of the things I thought was interesting today from the media availability was the conversation surrounding the whiteout and the energy and harnessing the energy. And, you know, it's interesting. I mean, look, Mason Appleton's played 20 playoff games, obviously not all of them here in Winnipeg. Well, I mean, with the Jets, but I mean, they haven't obviously all been home games. But even he, a guy who's played this many games here in this market, still found it difficult to harness that energy to kind of get acclimatized to it. Now, obviously, they've had the one game. I think they're ready for it. But I just thought it was an interesting kind of idea that they're still trying to, as the home team, trying to find a way to use that energy so it doesn't kind of overamp them.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the record, guys, right? I mean, not a lot of home ice wins to be had, right? I mean, yes, last year against Colorado, but outside of that, not really a whole lot. Like none in 2019. Obviously the games against the Oilers were not attended by more than our buddy Seltzy and whoever else was in the building.
Let's not forget about Beal Seltzy.
as he was Seltzy, actually. It's a secret, but don't tell anybody.
So, I mean, even too, like for Appleton to say that like it changes the viewing dynamic with the color. So Jim Montgomery obviously had the line of the day saying, and again, Spider-Man meme here.
It's a Spider-Man trio between you, me, and Montgomery.
So, yeah, exactly. So light shining off the top of my head, like that's good stuff right there, right? So good for Monty to be sharing his sense of humor. But yeah, Dave, I mean, people were jazzed, and I thought the other part that's interesting is Arniel talking about Super Bowl. And so I mean, your day is so different, right? And even you can tell with the fans, they're like yelling at 10 minutes before, and now you're like almost the puck drop gets here, and they're like, "Yay!" they spent all that time jazzing them up, and then all of a sudden they come out of the tunnel, and you're like, "Okay, well, let's play hockey now." But yeah, in terms of feeding off energy, you see it. But as Scott Arniel said, the other part of that is your oohing and awing also gets amplified. So if you don't make the right play, or if there's a great save by Binnington at the other end, there's that other part of the equation where now maybe you're squeezing the stick a little bit. And even too, guys, I mean, Dylan Sandberg's been the Jets' second best defenseman this year. We haven't seen a single player get behind him twice in one game all year long.
Right.
And it's not that he played poorly. One of them is a bad bounce, but Kairu's the kind of guy that everyone's played against a guy like that in whatever level hockey you're playing. If you're not paying attention to him, sometimes he's hanging out at the far blue behind you, and that often leads to breakaways. So I expect that a guy like Dylan Sandberg, we saw last year, he got elevated minutes when Brendan Dillon had his hand stepped on, and it didn't go overly well. And David, it reminds me of the series against Milwaukee a few years ago. Yeah. Remember, Sandberg and Johnny Kovacevic were the best defensemen on the Moose by miles that year. And they had a tough series. It seemed like they were on for almost every single goal against in the series.
True.
But now he's to the point where I think the confidence level, he'll be getting back to playing Dylan Sandberg hockey today.
Yeah.
Stable, moving the puck with confidence. I think we saw a little bit of more physical play in his game the other day. And that's what you need when you got guys coming at you the way that the Blues do on their forecheck.
Well, sorry, I just want to ask you one follow-up, Kenny. But isn't that a kind of a problem for St. Louis, is that you didn't get the Jets' best effort. You didn't get the Jets' A+ effort from Connor Hellebuck. You didn't get it from some of those guys. And we heard it from Scott Arniel today when he was talking to us in the Matt Frost. He said, some guys didn't have their best performances. So if you were the Jets, who have been so good all year, and listen, like these guys are going to not have it 2 in a row, most likely. Yeah. If you're the St. Louis Blues, was that not such a big missed opportunity given what they had from the Jets?
Absolutely, yes. If you had told the Blues that they were going to score 3 times on the road, have the lead on multiple occasions, and they didn't win the game, that's a big time miss.
3 times in the first 25 minutes of the game.
Exactly, Drew. So yeah, I mean, but at the same time, I don't think that we missed our chance, let's pack our bags and this series is over. Like this is a team that basically came from almost 2019 lengths just to get in. And guys, they finished with the same number of points as the Flames. If they don't win the 12th game in a row, they're not in the playoffs. So They're still sort of playing with house money here, but they have a coach that isn't allowing them to think that way. He wants them to be free, but they're not just here to put up a good opposition. They're not a tomato can, but they're also not satisfied with just being in the playoffs, where a team like Montreal is ahead of their curve. Like, these guys haven't had a home playoff game since the Colorado Avalanche knocked them out of the playoffs. So they're also hungry to do something. So I expect them to raise their level, but I mean, it's a massive missed opportunity, Dave, for sure. They had a lot of things go right for them, and it still wasn't enough. And not only was it not enough, they barely even got in the Jets' end in the third period. So that can be demoralizing if you let it. But to me, I think the Blues will be ready. But I also do think there's an opportunity the Jets could strike early and sort of get that. We've seen them, the Python special, right? The snatching of the belief, the boa constrictor style that they play with when they're at their best. They squeeze the life out of their opponent.
Right.
And I think that's what the Jets will be trying to do in the first period today.
Well, that's where I was going to take it. Ken Weeb is our guest. This is a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's the Illegal Curve pregame show, live on location at Cityplace. That's where I was going to take my question, Ken. The parallels between Game 1 of the 17-18 series against the Minnesota Wild were striking to me. You know, the Jets were down in that game to the Minnesota Wild. The Jets were obviously the heavy favorite. They come back, they get the late goal by Joe Morrow. And then Game 2, it's dominant performance by the Jets. 4-1 was the victory. To me, that is, you know, again, I can't help but note those parallels. And I think that's going to be a significant hurdle for the Blues to overcome, because I don't also expect that Connor Hellebuyck, I mean, you think about Connor Hellebuck's tale of two games, really. You know, he's not great in Game 1. You know, he gives up the 3 goals. The last half of the game, he faces maybe a grand total of about 4 shots, makes the big save on Jordan Kyrou. But, you know, Connor Hellebuyck, I think all the Jets players, top to bottom, are going to just be more settled entering the start of today's game. And I don't think that bodes well for the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, I would just say the one difference in terms of X factors, and Devin Dubnyk, I'm not, you know, again, no offense to him, but Devin Dubnyk hasn't had the playoff success that Jordan Binnington has. And guys, we talk about timing all the time. So I happened to park my car in the Delta Parkade today. And as I came out of the elevator, there's Jordan Binnington.
I thought you were going to say there's Devin Dubnyk. I'm like, what's Devin Dubnyk doing there?
There were a bunch of fans yelling for Binnington. And he did look over his shoulder, and he at first I think he thought it might have been me. I'm like, Jordan, it wasn't me. Yeah, it's a few people behind you. You know, enjoy the game tonight. But he looked, you know, again, this is like
our armchair psychologist.
We're looking here.
Yeah.
This is a guy who's been dialed in a lot of his life in big games. I don't think he'll be nervous for Game 2. Now, he's going to have to, I think, to your point, I think he's going to have to basically stand on his head in the first period in order to avoid the avalanche that will be coming from the Jets. But again, that's why we play the games. So, right. But I do think that he will be under siege in the first period. And if he's not, I'll be surprised.
Well, you know, sorry, Ezzy, but, you know, Connor, so from the Connor Hellebuyck perspective, you know, the last half of the game, I mean, he gets tested that one time. Other than that, he doesn't really face any shots. You know, where do you think Connor Hellebuyck is at entering this Game 2? Obviously, you know, didn't have the best Game 1, outperformed Binnington, you could argue, makes the huge save on Kyrou. Do you expect a better version of Connor Hellebuyck tonight?
Yeah, I do, but I also, my counter is I don't think he was as poor as some people thought. So on the first goal, he kind of got frozen. It was a 3-on-2 down low. Thomas sort of sold the shot.
I thought it was the third goal he was too deep in the net on.
Sure, but I mean, that's also that goal doesn't happen unless Sundqvist is there. Like, I don't think he saw it, right? So the shot comes from distance. Mm-hmm. So you're like, well, he's got to stop that. It's from just inside the blue line, but he didn't see it. And it still went like it landed in between where the crossbar and the post is.
It was a great shot.
But yes, I mean, we're not used to seeing shots from there go in, right? That's to your point. And the Sundqvist goal is more just unlucky. It hits the shin pad, lands on a stick, and by the time you can react, it's kind of behind you. So the fact that he didn't let any softies, and again, we know Connor never lacks confidence, but I don't think he would have come out of Game 1 shaken at all. I think that you could tell in the post game. Normally, if he has a rough outing, he's not even out there. Right. The fact that he was enjoying himself, which is something, speaking to us, he doesn't often enjoy himself. Let's be honest here. So I said this earlier, right? Where Connor Hellebuyck, where he's at mentally or how he plays would be, if you're Scott Arniel, it is I'm not even sure it makes the cue card, to be honest, in terms of level of concern.
Yeah.
But having said that, I do think he will be sharp, and I think he knows the importance of being sharp because he knows the guy at the other end isn't going to be giving up a lot of softies either. And I think that Connor Hellebuck embraces that part of it. People can say whatever they want. We know the numbers have been not great for him in the last 2 playoffs. I think Connor is ready to, find the best version. The whole thing about playoff Helly, I think he's going to be changing the definition by the time we're done this spring.
I can't argue with that at all. I
Well,
can't
I hope
believe.
not.
I can't believe.
And more importantly, why would you want to argue with Kenny?
Exactly. I can't believe we're this far into the interview with Kenny and we haven't broken down Kyle Connor's game-winning goal, because I think I've watched it maybe 50 times at this point. I mean, we saw them try that earlier. We've seen them try that earlier in the season. But when they're executing like that, like you said, it's going to be very tough. Jordan Binnington will almost have to stand on his head when they're executing the way they are, and especially on that set play where Kyle Connor looks like he doesn't have any time and space, and then I always call it puts the rocket skates on and finds his open seam, and Scheifele finds him the puck. Like, I guess first off, it's been a couple days now, but what were your original thoughts on that goal and just the Scheifele-Connor duo, which is right now, again, like Dave said, we talked about it, but they're an X factor, but they're playing exactly like they need to be playing in this type of heightened environment.
Sure. First of all, I thought you'd be asking me about the Gus Bus and the pass that he made as he
doesn't talk about that
he doesn't get a point on that, but the pass to the point that he makes is elite level.
Huge.
But
Yeah.
in terms of elite level, it's to borrow a Claude Noelism. That's Scheifele and Connor are playing chess while the other folks are playing checkers on that situation. And you can know that it's coming, but you still can't defend it at times. So just everything about that play. And I love how Adam Lowry described it, because Adam Lowry describes everything at a kind of chess level.
Yep.
His ability to find space when there is none, right? The backwards drifting. And we often talk about straight line speed. It's Kyle's ability to go from, oh, you think you can check me with a stick length. Oh, now I'm over here, and Mark Scheifele has changed the angle, and he's found a lane, and oh, by the way, it's behind you already.
I was going to say,
by the
Kenny,
time
Kyle
you notice
Connor,
where it is, it's behind the goalie.
Well, Connor's backward skating is 10 times faster than my forward skating.
Yeah, see, that's not a compliment.
Maybe not use yourself as an example. But okay.
More than 10.
No, that's fine. A little bit more than 10, maybe 1,000.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of what they're able, like how I led my way into the story, I mean, it's a pass that Mark probably could have made blindfolded,
Yep.
but he didn't want to, like I said, my line that I used is he didn't want to make it sound like he was bragging, right? But that's when you play, and again, I don't want to go into narratives, but for the folks for the split up Scheifele and Connor line from the first month of this season,
People are a little quiet right about now.
that one hasn't aged super well. Just going to put that out there. But I mean, this is what Scott O'Neill envisioned. And quite frankly, guys, this is what Rick Bowness envisioned. Yep. And I spoke with him about that in November when the Jets were in Florida. And it's just, yes, they had things they had to improve. We saw it by the numbers. We saw it by the eye test. We saw it by everything. You cannot be getting out. If you're a top line, you cannot be getting outscored when you're that good in producing 80 to 90 plus points. And this year they didn't. After the tough start, they have blown their competition out of the water. But that chemistry and ability, and to your point, whether it's Velarde and bringing his skill set or the worker bee lunch bucket of Iafallo, those two guys' ability to find one another has been impressive to watch over the course of both of their careers. And it's incredibly tough to defend against, which is why you need to get on the body with those guys if you're St. Louis, which was part of their game plan. They just couldn't really, those guys are elusive and hard to hit, but their ability to connect in big spots, pretty impressive. And Scheifele getting the puck to Iafallo in front was also all world. And Iafallo had no space to get, he found that underneath the one part of Binnington that wasn't on the ice, basically, right? Yeah. So, those guys got to continue to be good. But yeah, I mean, that's something that it's second nature to them. And to us, I've watched Mark Scheifele play almost every single game as a Jet. There's still moments where I open my mouth and I'm like, wow, that's just, I've seen a lot of good plays by Mark Scheifele. And then there's times where you go, man, how did he find him there? And that's, again, back to Lowry. the fact that someone is doing that in their 30s, like, this is, Connor Bedard at 19, 20, making these changes to his game, fine. But the fact that Mark is still continuing to get better at his age and experience level, that's part of the reason why the Jets were comfortable giving him a 7-year deal at the time.
Well, and it's funny, Kenny, you mentioned that because, and I want to ask you something else, but Colby Spence, our photographer over there, was chit-chatting, eating some good food here at the food court at Cityplace, but he took a great picture of Scheifele, and you can see with his eyes, he's not even looking at Connor. He knows where he is.
Looked him off.
And it's just perfect because Parayko thinks he's just going for a shot. So that's why he gives Connor that time and space. But it just captured it beautifully because Scheifele knows he's there, but he doesn't even look in Connor's direction because he knows where he's going to put that puck. I thought it was fabulous. But the one player I want to ask you about, because he does
just quickly, the last thing that I didn't mention, and you guys probably mentioned on the post-game show, it's after an icing, right? And so on a night where Mark Scheifele wins 40% of his draws, he wins the one that he needs to win.
Yeah.
And it leads to the game-winning goal.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Face-offs don't matter, though.
And what do you think about, along those same lines?
Hey.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm stepping on your question here.
I hijacked it. Sorry.
That's all good.
What do you think about Scott Arniel throwing Neil Pionk out there with Josh Morrissey on that face-off?
We saw it a lot. Both first and second periods. Also, he did it late. So that's something that's something they do often, and it also too. It's not like you're throwing Erik Karlsson over the boards, and it's a guy that can't play defense if you have to. But the fact that they load up, I thought, again, to your point, which you didn't say out loud, but I'm saying it out loud. Scott Arniel had an awesome game one in terms of both matchup game and in-game times where he saw a line was going, he got them over, a shift here, gets the fourth line out against the fourth, gets Pionk and Morrissey out together, defending properly, all those things.
Well, to your point, and sorry, Dave, I'm sorry here, but to your point
on my point,
he doesn't
today.
sound sorry.
Yeah, to your point about Scott Arniel and the way he ran the bench, I don't think a Jets player had more than 20 minutes of ice time. He was able to still cycle through his lines. It was
24.
Was it that high?
Yes.
Okay, then maybe
You just got Ken Reed fact check
I was
there,
going to
Mindell.
say, Drew, don't test Kenny. Don't test him.
Sorry, forwards. He was able to run his forwards.
Now he has the qualifier.
Yeah, sorry.
A little backtracking happening now.
I was impressed that he was just, again, I think it spoke to how the Jets really, especially in the last 2 periods of the game, it didn't really matter what matchup he threw over the boards. The Jets were almost winning those minutes as a forward group. They were successful at that point in time.
For sure, and that's why Dave and I were talking about Jared Anderson-Dolan as the Joe Morrow of this year's playoffs on Sunday at the Iceplex Friday at the Iceplex. Just the ability for the fourth line to be more than just a hold water type of scenario here, Drew, has been a massive development for them. And Anderson-Dolan, Dave's seen him play more than anybody at this table. And after a tough year with the Moose, he's gotten back to the player that nearly made, some people forget, the guy nearly made the Jets. He nearly beat out Rasmus Kupari to be the 13th forward
until he
broke his foot in the second last preseason game. This dog on a bone mentality, finishing every check, that's what we saw in training camp. It just stopped happening because he got hurt, and then he never really found his legs until a couple months into the season. And then he was one of the best forwards for the Moose down the stretch from what we've been told and what you saw with your own eyes. So back to your question that was so rudely interrupted by me.
So rudely interrupted. But the only thing I was going to say, the only add-on I was going to say, Kenny, the only thing that Scott Arniel didn't do well in that first game, his first win as a head coach, I might add, although we mentioned that, of course, but he didn't preserve his voice. He did not do a good job of preserving his voice, as he mentioned to us, because it was so loud. So that's the blame of the whiteout.
Like Rennie, when Rennie was on IC on Saturday morning, he was hoarse.
Well, he was having a good time. But the player I want to ask you about, because we always talk about how big the stage is and whether you're prepared to kind of take that next step and be ready for it. I thought was Cole Perfetti, because it doesn't, again, since he's become Prickfetti, since he kind of made that change, a hat trick against Utah, I think it was, and his whole demeanor seems to have changed. But what have you seen from him? Because we know how he came into the playoffs last year, of course. It was very late. And this year, he's just an integral part of the team, it appears.
Yeah, he's gone from complimentary player to primary point producer, especially with the 2 top 6 forwards out and the 3rd and 4th leading scorers on the team sideline for, at least a few more games in terms of Lardy and Ehlers. Don't expect him back anytime soon, would be my advice, even though we don't have any clarity on that. But yeah, Perfetti's ability to elevate his game when the games got harder, that is the biggest difference between last year and this year. Last year, he didn't even get a chance to be involved in most of those games. Yes, he ended the season on a high note when the games didn't really matter and the opponents weren't as tough. But this year, a lot of his points came against hard teams, hard matchups, big defense, going to the hard areas and that to me, Cole's ability to persevere through what was an incredibly tough thing emotionally for him last year, and I know this because I spoke to him the day after his first healthy scratch, and the fact that he said he didn't want it to happen again, and then it happened 10 more times, and then it happened 3 more times in the playoffs, or 4 more times in the playoffs before he got in. That would have been a big motivating piece for him. This is a guy who's highly motivated anyway, and although Jets fans don't necessarily want to hear it, the best thing for Cole Perfetti was for the Jets to be out in round 1, so he had a longer summer of training in terms of building his body up after those 2 years in a row of season-ending injuries. Of course, he's not thinking that way at the time, but he maximized the time that he had in order to get his body ready to play, and then physically and mentally is where he took that other big step. And Scott Arniel has referenced the maturity part a lot. Cole's a guy who beats himself up in terms of when things aren't going well. So last year was incredibly hard on him mentally, along with physically, but his ability to get a little bit more joy out of the game, and that's come from having results. But I think it's very much chicken and egg. He allowed himself to enjoy it more, and then the results kind of kept coming and coming and coming, and they kept coming in big spots, which is why I still see Cole as being a massive part of this series. Ezzy, to your point earlier on about the second line.
Absolutely.
And the other part I love about Cole, he's not deferring anymore. We saw him score on that 2-on-1
driver
with Kyle Connor. We see him on that top power play unit, not deferring, making confident plays, and knowing that when it's his turn to shoot, he's not hesitating. He's attacking. And to me, that's been the biggest difference in Cole's game this year. But I think the big thing for Jets fans and for Cole himself, he's just scratching the surface. This isn't the ceiling of Cole Perfetti. This is a guy that could be a 90-plus point player. And I say that at a time where Mark Scheifele just hit 87 for the first time in his career. Cole's got that kind of smarts, even though he doesn't skate as well as Mark. We always talk about the word processor. Because of the word processor, I think that Cole can be a consistent 80-plus guy and can probably be north of 90 once those first power play minutes that have generally been afforded to Ehlers this year are afforded to him moving forward. You know, again, provided he stays healthy and keeps on this trajectory. He's just scratching the surface for me, guys.
An hour until puck drop. Ken Wiebe has complete game coverage on via the Winnipeg Free Press. You can read it online. You can read it in the Dead Tree edition. And of course, Kenny and Rennie will follow later on tonight, following the Illegal Curve post-game show.
And Rennie's voice is back now. I've heard. It's not
allegedly. He's got to sit beside me during the game, so we'll see how it's feeling afterwards.
If he's talking too much, just elbow him in the ribs and tell him you got to save it for the post-game show. Kenny, thank you, buddy.
Thanks for having
Always
me, guys.
appreciate it.
Enjoy the post game.
Thank
Cheers,
you,
fellas.
Ken Wiebe, good friend of ours, joining us this afternoon on the Illegal Curve.
Just like a hole-in-one,
pregame
that interview
show.
right there.
Of course, it was a two hole-in-one in one round interview is what that was. We take our final commercial break. When we come back, more on the Jets and the Blues. We are live in downtown Winnipeg here at Cityplace in the food court.
Oh, Spency just got here.
Spency's here. There you go. It's a party. I think that Callum as well is here too. In any event, lots going on here on the Illegal Curve pregame show. Don't go anywhere.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. Cityplace is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make Cityplace your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit Cityplace at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve pregame show, live on location here at Cityplace. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsberg.
Don't forget about Spency.
Spency just came by. Producer Tim's here. Our buddy,
the Rockman family.
The Rockman family. Friends and family galore here at Cityplace as everyone's excited for Game 2 between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. I have to tell you guys quickly this story. I texted you, but Spency's over here. I ran into Spency yesterday.
Yeah.
And
Spency, get in here. Come on, we need Spency in the shot. Let's go, Spency.
And he was with a fine gentleman named...
Well, why are you telling the story? This is going to be a story that's going to be on illegalcurve.com.
So it's going to be written on illegalcurve.com.
Yeah, you're
so I'm giving everybody the opportunity. There you go. Spency's coming in there.
That's the good luck kiss.
But I got to give Spency credit. He's doing the service for the city of Winnipeg, Tourism Manitoba. Callum, who's visiting Winnipeg, he's a Jets super fan from England.
Yeah,
visiting Winnipeg, first time ever. Decided that, he adopted the Winnipeg Jets as his team because he's a big fan of the Weakerthans. So that was the links. He
does not hate Winnipeg.
He does not hate Winnipeg as much as the Weakerthans sing that song where we all know that's tongue firmly in cheek. But as Callum is,
it is.
Yeah, it is. Callum flew into Winnipeg for the playoffs, and people are touring him around, including Spency himself. So he was,
That's what we do when fans come overseas. The province of Manitoba sends them Spency.
That's right. Spency is the ambassador for Winnipeg. But I just thought it's a great story that this guy who loves that Winnipeg band, and there's going to be a more fulsome article about it on illegalcurve.com.
Courtesy of our intern,
Massimo. Our
apparently Spency's refusing to comment though for that article.
But I just thought it's a great story. It just goes to show sort of that friendly Manitoba vibe in action. This is a guy who people have met, virtually through our chat and the WST chat and whatever Discord is. I don't even know what that is, but all sorts of things.
Talking about all the
like
kids
that.
are on Discord.
Well,
you got to get on that, man.
Yeah, I'm an old fart. Nobody wants me on any of their social media platforms, but I just thought it's a great story. We look forward to bringing it to you on the website, and I wanted to give kudos to Spency for doing a great job and showing Callum around in his visit to Winnipeg. In any event, moving back to the Jets and the St. Louis Blues.
Thank you, Spency.
Thank you, Spency. There he goes. We got sound effects as well.
A cameo sound.
Yes, exactly right. I also want to give a shout out. I texted it to you guys earlier today. I want to give a shout out to Emil.
Yeah.
Emil stopped me in the local grocery store and said he was a big fan of the show. So I wanted to give Emil a shout out. It says he tunes in all the time. I thought that was very nice.
And it was weird, Dave, because Drew mentioned Emil running into him at the grocery store, and I was like, Drew, can you pick me up some watermelon? And he refused. I thought while he's there, he could pick up some produce for me, but he wouldn't do it.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I just thought Drew wrote email wrong, and I was like, what email are you expecting me to remind you about? And then I realized after.
Exactly. Anyways, what we're saying is it's a big fun atmosphere here at Cityplace, and a big fun atmosphere in the city of Winnipeg. The vibes are high as expectations have now gotten even higher after the Winnipeg Jets.
Hello, former Premier Gary Dewar.
Premier Dewar. I'm going to get your name right this time as opposed to last time. I hope you'll forgive me. Okay, good. Okay, I'll screw up the name. There he goes, Premier Philman, after he brought the Jets good luck in game one. We'll do it again. It's a lot of fun, is what we're saying here.
Yes.
It's Cityplace. And the Jets really, again.
I thought the former Premier was going to maybe hop on and give his thoughts on the Jets Blues game, too.
If he wants to, it's an open invitation. If you've ever been elected to office here in Winnipeg, you can join you can jump onto the microphone. Or Manitoba, of course. Any elected official is welcome to join our microphone here. You have a standard you want to
I'm not so sure we want that many politicians on our show. Gary George seems to be the exception to the rule.
In any event.
No, Wobb's allowed to come on anytime he wants.
Defended IC, so we'll give him
Absolutely.
and of course our boy Evan Duncan.
There you go, City Councilor, former voice of the Manitoba Moose within the arena.
Correct.
Going back to his previous career. So, again, I look at the way game one ended from the Winnipeg Jets perspective.
Yep.
And I think this is a team that is playing with a high degree of confidence and that knows they're a better team than the St. Louis Blues as long as they execute. And it maybe took them 25, 30 minutes to get to that level of execution on Saturday night. But now that they know where it's at and they know the standard that they need to play at, I can't help but think that, again, as I said to Kenny, the parallels between 17-18 and that series against Minnesota in the first round that the Jets won in 5 games after they had a slow start, to me, it's going to take sort of an otherworldly performance by the St. Louis Blues to really overcome the talent disparity that I think exists between these two teams.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that just based on the last 2 games between the Jets and the Blues, right? The game on April 7th, which we keep talking about, forget if it was 3-1 or 4-1, whatever it was. And then game one, you're talking, Drew, about not only have the Jets won, I'd say 5 of the last 6 periods, the 5 periods that they've won of those 6 have been utterly dominant. So like you said, they have the ability, not to say that we're not going to see a big pushback from the Blues, because like we talked about, the Blues don't want to go down 2-0. They know how hard it's going to be, as Drew talks to the Drew Hollick's fan club, the Drew Mandel fan club over there. It's getting loud here, Dave.
Yeah,
it's getting loud. As we get closer and closer to game 2, it's getting loud. Good thing we have the security tape around us.
And Spency.
Yeah, and Spency, our personal bodyguard. Yeah.
But you're right, Ezzy, about the disparity in 5 of the last 6 periods. And, it just goes to show that when the Jets are executing, if you're St. Louis, it's hard to get up to that same level. It's hard to match what the Jets have been able to accomplish. The Jets, to me, just look dialed in and focused at the task at hand. Certainly, I don't expect, we've been saying this all year, there's a different vibe to this and a different, I think, level of commitment. Yeah. They found that extra 10%. I don't know if St. Louis has that extra 10% to go above the Winnipeg Jets to be successful.
Well, as I mentioned to Kenny, or as I asked Kenny about, to me, that's a missed opportunity for St. Louis, that first game. You don't have Connor Hellebuck at his exceptional level. You don't have the Jets at their exceptional level, and you don't take advantage of it. Well, you did, but then you didn't. And so the fact of the matter is the Jets were able to right the ship, get back on track, and pick up a win. And I don't think, to your point, Drew, that they're going to, again, I don't think that they're going to necessarily win in a sweep. I think there'll be some more adversity in the series, but the template is there. They know it. They know how to, again, the energy, the extra energy, I should say, that we talked about it with Mason Appleton today, that they got from the whiteout. Logan Stanley talked about it as well. I think that those guys kind of, again, have that energy harnessed, or know what to expect, I should say, so they'll be able to handle it. And again, overcome what was a slow first period. That to me is going to be key, how they come out in this first.
And I think another kind of component of this, I realize that there's pressure on the Jets in the sense of, we know that there was the reverse sweep, right? The last couple of years.
Yes.
There's pressure in that sense, but I think there's less pressure on the Jets now that they've got that first win, considering that they were down a couple of times in game 1, right?
Coming back, if you end up losing game 1, let's say you still control that third period and you end up losing. Binnington stands on his head. Great things happen for St. Louis. Kyrou scores. Kyrou scores on that breakaway, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Again, the doubts creep in.
Sure.
But when you just play your game and they don't change their style, that to me was such a sign of maturity for the Winnipeg Jets. That nothing changed about how they played. They just kept the puck down low. They just ground the St. Louis Blues. If you want to use the MMA term, ground and pound. That's what they did to the St. Louis Blues. And the Blues weren't able to withstand what the Winnipeg Jets do. And I frankly think that a lot of the Jets players that were a little shaky maybe early in game 1 are going to be better today. Kenny mentioned Dylan Samberg. A couple of uncharacteristic mistakes from Dylan Samberg. I don't know if it's nerves. I don't know if it's bad bounces, whatever it might be. I would expect Dylan Samberg to be better the Jets penalty kill. Remember, the Blues got 2 power play goals.
True. Like you're talking about Dylan Sandberg being better, and like Kenny said, Sandberg was pretty damn good. Aside from that one play which led to that was the Jordan Kyrou.
Yeah, I mean that was an air mail anyway.
Right?
So like he just
also took the hooking penalty.
Yeah, but but I'm talking about in terms of the Ezzy one. Like, to me, that's like it's just a random play. Like it's
right.
It's not like
it's a flip up.
It's not as like you're watching that in real time, Dave, and you're thinking like, oh, what's Sandberg doing? But it's a tricky play when the puck's in your skates. Like
and then he looked up and he got his eyes were blinded by the whiteout.
So really, it was the fans' fault. Is what it boils down to.
If the Jets whiteout fans could just be a little less white, that would be nice.
Like if you could like mute it a little bit, so when the Jets have it,
more of a cream color as opposed to
off-white, off-white
eggshell.
Eggshell,
something like that. I don't know. I feel like.
What do we have a painting sponsor right now?
We might have to find a painting sponsor based on our swatches that we're going through here on the Illegal Curve pregame show ahead of the Jets and the St. Louis Blues game 2 in about they say 45 minutes. But I think we all know that the games are not going to start closer until 6:45 rather than 6:30. That's usually how it works for television in any event. But I would expect, Dylan Sandberg to have a better game. I think the penalty kill, they got running around a little bit. It was that sort of scattered approach that often led to a couple of the power play goals that the Blues were able to score.
Hopefully the referees raise the standard for both teams, for the record. For both teams.
Yeah, you had a bugaboo about that.
Well, with good reason. Did you not agree, Ezzy? I thought the standard.
I thought the call on Shen
half,
specifically I didn't like.
All of them. I didn't like any of the first 3 penalties. I didn't think any of them were penalties. I thought, like, this is the playoffs. Unless it's egregious, let it go.
I also don't think, for the record, that the post whistle scrums that we saw in the last couple minutes of the game on Saturday night, that's standard playoff. I don't think there's anything lingering from that.
That's literally like I'm not sure how much of the playoffs how much of the games you guys watched yesterday, whether it was the Sens Leafs game or
I watched the Devils injuring themselves. I thought that was I thought your Devils did a great job injuring.
But they acquired
teammates.
Quinn Hughes today, though, Drew.
That's true. They did acquire Quinn Hughes. They just unofficially acquired. I don't know.
Can we talk about that for a second?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That was one of the most bizarre press conferences I've ever seen.
So Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvine, Dave, the Canucks Brain Trust, met with the media in Vancouver. And they spoke about Quinn Hughes, who's going to be a pending UFA after next season.
Yeah.
Basically, they said he's gone. I mean, it was the most like Jim Rutherford.
I couldn't believe what he was saying. I thought they would ask him about Elias Pettersson.
Right.
But I mean that was the definition of tampering.
Jim Rutherford,
he literally was saying like we might trade Quinn Hughes, but we also might acquire the other 2 Hughes brothers, which by the way is not happening.
Yeah.
Like I'm a Devils fan. There's no way the Devils are trading either Jack Hughes or Luke Hughes, which is their best young defenseman. Like. As a Devils fan, I was just thinking, I was like licking my chops, like getting so excited for a Quinn Hughes acquisition.
You know the drunk uncle skit on Saturday Night Live?
Yeah, of course. I often think we have that on the show.
He's not quite, there actually is an uncle, so now that you mention it. I thought Jim Rutherford was, he certainly stepped over any sort of line of appropriateness.
Yeah,
he spoke very honestly and rationally, but it was not something that any Canuck fan wants to hear him talking about in that instance.
I feel like
was
the
bizarre.
happiest people were Vancouver journalists and broadcasters. It's like, thank you. You just gave us weeks of content here when we had really nothing else to talk about.
And you sort of saw like Rutherford, director of hockey operations or president of hockey operations, and you saw Alvine just sort of like trying to
giddy.
Stop him, like stop saying what you're saying right now. It was really
like
awkward.
the most nervous laughter. He's like,
we're getting fined big time for this.
We're gonna miss the playoffs for the next 10 years now. I mean, it's just so like again. We're not going to ever pass up an opportunity to make fun of the Vancouver Canucks organization here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, but
it was bizarre
when you can't retain your franchise defenseman. And in the aftermath, Dave, of the JT Miller Elias Pettersson situation, it's just I'm obviously joking.
You start to understand where the rot is coming from.
Well, exactly, and it's not a great time to be a Canucks fan, I guess is what I'm saying right now.
When you got Jets players re-signing left, right, and center rather than
Vancouver's an awesome city to live in. So I mean, like it's not exactly a hard sell.
It tells you a little bit about that. The culture might not be all hunky dory within the Canucks organization, but in any event, it's not
what is
important.
This, Canucks lunch?
It's not Canucks.
I sidetracked us there. Sorry, Drew, but I mean,
worthwhile.
I thought like again that was more of a Saturday morning topic.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't. I was like watching it. Our buddy Frank Saravalli tweeted it out, and I'm like watching it. I'm like, what is going on? And Jim Rutherford is essentially admitting that they're going to have to trade Quinn Hughes to the New Jersey Devils. Like, how often do you see that, Dave? Anyways, let's get back to Jets Blues. But
I clearly haven't. But I will go after this game, and after we're done, all of the work on a little site called illegalcurve.com, the home for all your latest Jets and Moose news.
And
I will, in fact, take a look at that clip.
10 minutes or so before we're going to wrap up the post the pregame show here. We're live at Cityplace. Great crowd, great atmosphere, white adorned people everywhere as they make their way through
I'm wearing
the
salmon,
arena.
actually.
You're
Shout
wearing
out to
salmon.
Ken. I just saw Ken. I didn't notice Ken earlier. He's sitting a little further back than I would like.
Well, we got friends here, friends, family. Everybody's wandering through here at Cityplace, stopping for a bite to eat, getting, choosing, downstairs. Boston Pizza, of course, is a great, game destination. We're going to be a sponsor of ours, of course. We're going to be at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue.
Drew with the big reveal.
Sorry, it is Taylor Avenue. Game 3. On Thursday night, we're going to be there for a live on location.
Drew's actually going to be popping out of a cake, Dave, at Boston Pizza.
Well, the game's at 8:30, which means it's probably at 8:45, which means it might be at 9, but we'll be at Boston Pizza in any event.
That'll be a late one.
That'll be a late one, no question about it. But I think everyone's going to stay awake for Game 3 between the Jets and the Blues. But, of course, first we have Game 2 going on this evening between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. Again, no lineup changes from the Winnipeg Jets perspective, no surprise. It's just really, take what you did in the last 30 minutes, bottle that up, and go win a game that is very winnable based on the talent levels that are on the ice. And the Jets, to me, for the first time of the last 3 playoff series, to me, I think the Jets know that they're the better of the 2 teams between them and the St. Louis Blues.
No, absolutely. I think we're all in agreement that if the Jets play similarly to the way they have in the last 5 of the last 6 periods, I should say, Dave, they're going to win this hockey game. But I don't want to take anything away from the St. Louis Blues and how good of a team they have. I realize that, in that 12-game winning streak, a lot of those wins were against teams that were non-playoff teams.
3 against Nashville.
Exactly. But, I still don't think and the Jets certainly won't take this team lightly. I still think this is going to be a close game. I do have the Jets winning this game. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring. Just because I said that, guys, probably there's going to be 9 or 10 goals tonight.
Well, we did say it was not good. Last game we said it was not going to be a special teams game and it was not going to be high scoring. And then there were
2 goals in the first period.
Well,
goals each.
You look at the goals the Jets gave up. Those are just uncharacteristic miscues when it came to their special teams. I thought they were just a little bit overexcited,
very aggressive.
Yeah,
which again feeds to the idea of using the energy. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I just think it fits within the framework of what we've heard.
Guys, you're not going to see against any team. You're not going to have a couple power play goals every night. That's just not going to happen, right? Even a team like the Colorado Avalanche, that number will come down, obviously, right? But one thing I wanted to mention, you mentioned no lineup changes, and we didn't expect lineup changes. You reported, Dave, or maybe it was Connor today. I forget who it was, but Rasmus Kupari, right? That development's a little bit interesting to me because I think it's worth mentioning. I don't know if Rasmus Kupari necessarily gets right back into the lineup, especially the way Jared Anderson-Dolan's been playing on the 4th line.
I don't see a role for him right now. With all due respect, now of course injuries can change things.
Think about it.
And also one other thing to mention with Morgan Barron up the middle,
that's right.
Could Rasmus Kupari play on the wing? Yes, in theory he could, but I'm just saying. Rasmus Kupari's kind of been forgotten about, even though he played the majority of the season with the Jets.
Right, but I think, again, remember, he came back into the lineup March 25th against the Washington Capitals. But, after dealing with a concussion he suffered on March 4th against the New York Islanders when he collided with Hudson Fasching. Right. So he had that concussion, dealt with it, missed 3 weeks, came back into the lineup March 25th, and has missed the last month. So, that's almost 2 months of hockey with one game. Scott O'Neill said, is he ready to take contact again? He is. He confirmed that yesterday. But clearly, he said his conditioning needs to get ramped up.
Right.
So
sounds more like a round 2 option. If you ask us,
is he an option? Yes, he is an option. Is he an option right now? No, I do not think so.
And nor should he, again, barring an injury, but there's no reason to be doing anything with that 4th line of the Winnipeg Jets.
No.
Given the way they played. Jared Anderson-Dolan, of course, getting the goal. Look, if your 4th line is chipping in offensively and, in addition to winning their minutes, so they won their minutes, 5-on-5, you look at their numbers.
I don't think it was close either.
Well, again.
They didn't play a ton, obviously. It was only about 8 minutes, right?
Yeah, they played 6 minutes at 5-on-5. So, other guys get a little bit of penalty kill and everything else. But again, the way they are performing, there's no reason for the Jets to consider altering that or switching things up along those lines. Keep things status quo with that 4th line because that's just how good they've been playing. Yeah. Not just one game, but weeks worth of games together as a 4th line. They've been executing that well, Dave.
Well, again, it's the plug and play nature of this team.
Yep,
the fact is that you have Jared Anderson-Dolan, who was with the Moose and didn't kind of deviate from the plan. He knew, as Kenny talked about, he breaks his foot, but he was the guy that everyone was thinking he was going to be at least the 13th forward. But he was going to be in the Jets lineup. And ultimately, of course, he doesn't. He breaks his foot, puts him behind the 8 ball, and then he has to work his way back in. Well, he goes and he does that. It works hard, doesn't complain about it. It's just a good veteran guy on a Moose team that's dealing with a tough season. And sure enough, he earns himself.
I think you were going to say you almost had the B word leave your mouth there. Bad Moose team.
No. I was going to say tough. I mean, they dealt with a lot of injuries. You lose Nikita Chibrikov, you lose Parker Ford, you lost Brad Lambert, you lost. I mean, they did again. Like they had the youngest goalie tandem in the entire league. So again, it was.
They had for me, they just had a real tough time scoring goals this year.
Absolutely, there's no question about it.
And like you said, I mean, there was a lot of things. There was injuries. A couple of young goaltenders.
Right, we'll have two.
It was a rough year. We're not going to use the B word.
No, but
even though Drew might want to hear the B word.
Yeah, but the reality is we'll have 2 straight days of Moose coverage in the next couple because, of course, the Moose are doing their end of season media availabilities tomorrow and Wednesday.
You saw Dan Fink earlier walking through the food court. Yeah, shout out to the Moose broadcaster.
And we'll be covering that, of course, on illegalcurve.com and on our YouTube channel. And let me tell you, folks, make sure you hit that subscribe button because our YouTube channel has been buzzing with new folks joining it and subscribing to the channel, but also tons of content that you're not getting anywhere else. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel and join along for. Oh, wait a second, is that salmon shirt guy?
That is salmon shirt guy. He's wearing
salmon shirt guy. Salmon shirt guy.
He's wearing a sign that says salmon shirt guy.
Breaking news. Salmon shirt guy is real.
There you go. And Dave snapped a photo of him, so I'm sure you're going to be seeing that at some point in time on our Instagram or whatever. There's always the one guy who's going to wear a salmon shirt. Well, he just walked by.
Well, we don't
us
know
here
if that's
at
actually the original 2020.
That actually looked more pink though than salmon.
Well,
because salmon is more orange.
My
right?
shirt's actually salmon, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't the same guy as the 2024 salmon shirt guy. But I don't know. He's looking to stand out.
If there can be multiple Drew's Jazz hands, there can be multiple salmon shirt guys. I think that's what.
I also love the fact that there's a guy named Drew Wendell that listens to the show or watches the show. That's not you.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
I know, and it's not somebody who's making fun of me either. It's just a guy whose name.
No. It's just a guy named Drew Wendell who likes Illegal Curve.
Yeah, he's from Ontario.
Yeah, well,
keeps us up to date on what's going on with Colby Barlow.
That's important. Everybody's got a role to play. Here with us in the Illegal Curve family. If you haven't already done so, to Dave's point, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel and make sure your notifications are on. And then all of you who are here within earshot at Cityplace, if you want to join us tonight for the Illegal Curve post-game show, just scan the QR code that's right over here behind me, and that'll get you right to our YouTube channel so you can join us after the game between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. Game 2. Post-game show will probably be right around, what time are we figuring? 9:15, 9:30, somewhere in and around that vicinity. Of course, if there's overtime, that'll skew the time. But whatever it is, join us after the game for complete comprehensive coverage of the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues. Got about 35 minutes or so until the claim puck drop is going to be closer to probably 45 minutes until. So you still have time to grab a bite to eat here from our friends at Cityplace, any of the great vendors that are open. Of course, there's also Shark Club and Boston Pizza downstairs. So wherever you're going to be, A&W, whatever you're going to do, make sure
you're going to be playing a little blackjack a little bit later, right? At Shark Club?
No, I'm not. Not tonight. Different times. But I've been known to.
I would play. I just don't know how.
Yeah, it's okay. That's then everyone wants to play.
You want to get close to 21, right?
No, the point is to get us over 21. That's how it works. That's the if you're asking the good people who are in charge of the game, they want you to be over 21 as much as possible. A lot of fun, of course, for Game 2 of the Illegal Curve pregame show. We'll be back if there is a Game 5. That's if the Jets don't sweep. There's going to be a Game 5. We know that
the way Game 1 ended, I don't know. I'm not like Dave picked the Jets in 5. I picked the Jets in 6. I feel like Jets in 6 was the most common pick.
Probably,
right? Like there were a few people that said Jets in 7.
Yeah,
very few people I saw pick the Blues at all. But I mean,
we'll see what happens. Sports bet guys.
I'm still
those are the same guys
sticking with 5 or 6.
Those are the same. Or Drew, sorry, those are the same guys who didn't predict the Jets would make the playoffs.
Right,
so
exactly.
I think they're trying to hope that if they do this, it'll salvage their original.
Well, and I'm also expecting those Vegas odds to change. I'm sure you guys have been watching those Vegas odds. Like the Jets are not only not first in best odds,
not favorites.
They're not first in their own conference.
I know.
Right? So I think if they end up beating the Blues 4 or 5 games, Dave, I think we're gonna see those odds improve in the Jets' favor.
So my point was, if there's a Game 5, we will be back here for another edition of the Illegal Curve pregame show. We are here prior to each and every Jets home playoff game. Live, Cityplace, second floor. That's our home away from home. And we look forward to being here again for Game 5 coming up in about, it seems like it's about 6 weeks from now, I think, is when Game 5 is scheduled. The weird scheduling. After the game tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show is your destination. We look forward to complete comprehensive coverage. We'll have audio from Jets players, video from Jets players. We'll carry it live for you on the Illegal Curve post-game show. Big thanks to all of you for joining us here at City
Producer
Place.
Timmy, thanks again.
Producer Tim does a great job as always. Photographer, videographer Colby Spence was here. Ken Weeb was with us. Jeremy Rutherford was with us. My colleagues, Dave Manouk and Ezra Ginsburg, are with us as well. Big thanks to the sponsors, City Place. They bring us here. We appreciate them so very much. Our friends at Play Now, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Boston Pizza, Holt Dental, and of course, Seagram's. They are all supporters of us, so we encourage you to support them. After the game, it's the Illegal Curve post-game show. We will see you then. For Dave Manouk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Enjoy Game 2 between the Jets and the Blues. We'll see you after the game on the Illegal Curve YouTube channel.